Before we begin with members' questions, I do want to flag that we anticipate two vote series today. The first one starting at 10:30, and the secretary has a hard stop. So what I'm asking is let's be respectful of the secretary's time and try to keep our questions to 5 minutes. Stay underneath your, underneath our rules. So with that, I'm going to turn to Ranking Member Larsen for opening questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for coming today. I appreciate it. There's a lot of math out there in terms of how much you've spent, how much hasn't been spent, what's going on. By my math, we're about 52.8% of the way in terms of timeline to September 30th, 2026. Also by my math, the DOT has distributed about 48.1% of the dollars. So pretty close, not exact, but pretty close, almost half and half. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you've had getting dollars out the door and what you've done to address those challenges so communities can benefit from the dollars in the BIL?
Thank you. Yes, as you noted, we are more or less right in the middle of the 5-year life of this authorization, and depending how you measure, but by the most basic measure of funds flowing out, we've made roughly half of the funding available. As you know, our funding works typically on a reimbursement basis, which means not only do we have to announce an award, but there needs to be an agreement making clear that federal requirements have been met for that project. Then the project sponsor needs to undertake it, and then the dollars can be fully outlaid after obligation. But we've been trying to work within that to try to create flexibility where appropriate with tools like pre-award authority so that work can begin if again, appropriate and if the right checks and balances are there. We want to make sure that process is never a barrier to things getting done. There are a lot of challenges along the way. The complexity of the projects, supply chain and workforce challenges given the enormous volume of work that we're doing. And while the overall number from the best data that I can gather, the overall number of projects delivered now is on par with what we would have seen at this point in a previous administration. We really want to accelerate and compress the timelines, especially the time between an award announcement and a grant agreement. We've stood up teams that I personally engage with and do a great deal of work under the hood to try to speed up those processes.
Are there specific actions that you can outline for us that you have taken with regards to that process?
Yeah, I would point to the Center of Excellence that we have established on project delivery. We brought some of the best talent and some of the best data that we have to try to get that done. We've used steps like programmatic approaches and sometimes combined NOFOs in order to have less red tape and fewer steps associated with the same number of projects. We've also undertaken a new level of technical assistance with our grant sponsors, because often it's the first time that they've done a federal grant of this magnitude, especially the rural and tribal communities that we've been working with. And so through both structured programs like the Thriving Communities program and just our running capacity for technical assistance, we're standing side by side with our project sponsors. The instructions I've given to our team is, even if the delay in some federal process is coming from the state or the county or the city not yet being ready with something, we should take ownership of that. We should take responsibility for that and not just say, it's your problem, you fix it. We're going to be side by side with you, helping you navigate these processes, even while we're working to make them simpler on the front end, which begins just with my quest to get NOFOs below 100 pages, which is actually was not the norm we inherited. But it's just one small example of what we're trying to do to make this a more user-friendly federal grant process.
Yeah, thanks. Can I move to rail safety? And now that the NTSB had their hearing Tuesday, the report is out. I think we're briefed tomorrow morning on the report, if I'm not mistaken, here on the committee. Has the department looked at specific actions, legislative actions that we need to take versus any regulatory actions that the department can take?
We've undertaken a number of regulatory actions, but of course are assessing the recommendations that have been made public, even though they haven't been formally transmitted yet to us as a department, to make sure that we're doing everything we can within our existing regulatory authority to keep freight rail safe. But the reality is, while we're going to keep doing everything we can short of an act of Congress, it's going to take an act of Congress to give us some of the tools that we need. I would point to two things in particular that I think are important that are contemplated in the bipartisan legislation that has been put forward and that we urge this committee and this chamber to act on. One has to do with increasing the statutory caps on fines to put more teeth in our enforcement. Right now, they're capped in the neighborhood of $220,000, which just isn't that much to a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Another thing I would point to is the acceleration of the adoption of DOT 117 tank cars, which the FAST Act set at 2029, later than what the department had planned on previous to that congressional intervention. My understanding of the information that's been made public by the NTSB is if those tank cars had been in use, what happened in East Palestine might not have.
All right, thank you.
Mr.